hit by crisis. Many of you will know how that feels. However, many of you might have gone through a time where you think, I have no idea what I should do with my business because it's rather hard to change my business model to the new circumstances we're in. And today we have an international expert here, someone who I know for years, someone who I met during a sales lab in Phoenix, Arizona, and a very valued colleague. Hello and welcome, Alan Berg.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me.
So, Alan, you're a CSP, you're a global speaking fellow. You pretty much have all the designations we have in our business industry. And let's face it, for me, it was rather easy. Sustainable leadership expertise goes well on Zoom, no problem. You are in the wedding industry and wedding business industry. When the crisis hit, I just have to ask in a very straightforward way, what was left of this industry?
It's really interesting. I've been in the industry for over 25 years, and we've survived every economic crash, stock market, housing, the 9/11 tragedy, even weddings still kept going. This was the first time that people in our industry were told, you can't do what you do. You physically can't bring people together. You're not allowed to bring people together. And this screeching halt that it came to was something we've never experienced because we've really been so lucky. It's a recession resistant industry. We've been able to survive all of these other crashes. So you go through, what is it? Is it 5 stages of grief, 7 stages of grief? What is it? What are the, right? So the initial part, it's like, oh no, this is not going to be too bad. People will push their weddings off. And the good news with weddings is you can delay it. That's unlike the South by Southwest conference, which got canceled last year. You're never recouping that. The opportunity cost is gone on that. Yeah. So they, oh no, we'll just push it off. We'll reschedule these till later. And then as the pandemic went on and on, you really had such a disaster for our industry because it's mostly made up of small businesses. The good news and the bad news of the wedding industry is that the barrier to entry is very low. If you want to be Niles, the wedding photographer, you can just say, I'm Niles, the wedding photographer. That's it. Yeah. No license. You either prove it or don't prove it by what you do. So unless you're a venue where you have to have a building and all those things, the barrier to entry is very low. That's great. But it's also bad because a lot of those people have no idea how to run a business. Therefore, they didn't have an emergency fund. They weren't prepared for this type of downturn that extended, for some people, 6, 8, 10 months. For other people, it's still going on now more than a year later. Because as you and I were speaking offline before, in the United States, although I've presented in 14 countries, but in the United States, there's 50 states. And the states have rules that the government for the U.S. has rules, and then each municipality could have their own rules, and then each business can have their own guidelines. So it's so all over the place here. But it was really the first time where this screeching halt came instead of we have a pause, like with 9/11. I was working for a company called The Knot, like tie the knot. Yeah, I was vice president of sales. It was the largest wedding website in the world, and 2 days after the 9/11 tragedy, the traffic to our website was back to what it was before. 2 days. 2 days.
48 hours, and you're basically where you were before, okay?
And that's because it was isolated. It really mostly affected people in New York, people in Pennsylvania, people in D.C. That's what it affected. It's the same thing like with a hurricane or a tsunami or something like that. We all watch it on TV and go, oh, that's terrible. Look at that. That's horrible. Look at these people that died. Look at this tragedy. But it didn't affect you personally. This is global, literally global. I was looking the other day, since I didn't travel, and you and I used to travel so much.
Absolutely.
In 2019, I flew just on United Airlines 140,000 miles, and I was away 178 nights. And now I've been home for 13 months. So
lots of DIY projects coming on, I assume, then.
You saw those, and lots of bourbon.
Yes, I did.
But what I was looking to see is, how many different countries did people tune into things that I had done between sales training and webinars and masterminds? And I'm already at 48 countries, and I still think there is some more. And I've done many webinars for groups in India, Australia, in Europe, in South America, and everybody's affected the same way. You're being told you can't do your job. It's not that you don't want to do your job. You can't do your job because your customers aren't allowed to do what you have. So this year, 2021, is going to be the busiest wedding year in our lifetimes because you're cramming 60% roughly of the weddings from last year into this year, some even to next year. And the good news is a lot of businesses that were able to weather the storm are going to recoup some of what they had lost from last year. The bad news is there are people that, just said, you know what, we're going to just get married and that's it. We're going to forego the party and there you go. But it's been very interesting to see how different businesses have weathered this through pivoting to different services. Like you were saying, can a wedding be online? Well, there were. People were doing Zoom weddings. They were getting together with a celebrant who can legally perform the ceremony, socially distant from them with a mask on, having their witnesses, because you need for to be legal, you need to have at least 2 witnesses. And I saw photos where there's 5 people, and then it's being Zoomed to their friends and family. And then what happened is, as you were allowed to bring people in, because you and I were talking also offline about how, like, the state of Texas, or as we like to call it, the country of Texas,
has Bavaria and Germany, basically. It's just the country inside the country. Yeah. And that's why Germans always say Bavaria is not Germany.
Right. And Cork in Ireland wants to be its own country also. So it's the same thing. So in Texas, where they opened it up sooner, people were doing weddings, but some people either wouldn't come because they were health concerns, or shouldn't come because of the health concerns, or just didn't want to. Or in some cases, depending upon where you were coming from and going to, you might have to quarantine for 14 days before you could then go out to an event like that. So people can't go to a wedding in another state and have to get there 14 days early. It is really, really crazy stuff. But the pivot was that, yes, people were doing Zoom and saying, listen, we'll have 50 people for the wedding because that's the maximum we're allowed. But Aunt Sally in California or in England or whatever can watch. They can tune in. They can see what's going on. It doesn't make up for it. For other people, the interesting thing with the statistics, the average wedding in the United States in 2019 was about $29,000 or $30,000 US. And last year it was about $19,000. And that's mostly because of the size of the wedding. But the dress costs the same, no matter how many people you're having. And it was the food, but the photography might cost the same. The music might cost the same things. And then just adapting. There are a lot of places where dancing was not, in some cases, is still not allowed. So you go to a wedding now, do you need a band? Do you need a DJ? Without it, it's a pretty boring party with no music, but yet you can't dance, right? So it's just really been an interesting thing to see how people have been adapting and trying to make the best of the situation. You had couples who were understanding of it, and then you had couples that were just feeling the victim. We talk about the victim card. Everybody carries one, but some people wear it on their foreheads. Yeah. And some people just felt victimized. And why won't you give me a refund? Well, you know what? The truth was they didn't have the money because they weren't making any money. So it was, businesses that could afford to do it were trying to refund as much as possible. Other ones were saying, sorry, your contract says, no refunds. Yeah. And then, the other thing interesting, Niles, is how many people actually read their contract terms?
Not many. We all know these moments where you just scroll through something, click on agree, and just proceed.
Right. So, what happened last year, I thought was very interesting. Probably around May or June, there were a lot of webinars and things of people talking about what force majeure means. Yeah. And does this cover? Does this not cover? People had wedding insurance. Does it cover the pandemic? In some cases, it was yes. In some cases, it was no. So we all got our lessons and things. But I was talking to someone just the other day, and I said, in 2023, we're going to be sitting at a bar one time talking about, you remember what 2021? Yeah. It's like war stories. We made it through the war here. Yeah. I just think the time has flown. I don't know if it's done that for you. I can't believe I've been home for 13 months. My wife didn't used to have me home for 13 days. Yeah. And now I'm home for 13 months.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about adapting businesses, you are a global speaking fellow. How many do we have worldwide?
37 now.
So 37 globally. So you're one of the best people in the speaking industry. And let's face it, many people, even some very senior professionals, struggled during the pandemic. Looking at your business, you adapted quickly. You went online, different form. What, in your opinion, is the difference that you do differently? Because normally people would say, okay, when someone adapts quickly, that is some 24-year-old digital native, et cetera, and you are a couple of months older than 24, I guess.
Couple,
so
yeah.
A couple, yeah, a couple. You just stay with a couple, yes. So what do you do differently that you make it through all these different challenges, while other people, even as I said, seasoned professionals say, what I do on stage simply doesn't work. I have no idea how I should make a single dollar out of my business suddenly from one day to the other. Some people went on a $0 revenue stream for 13 months.
Yes. So there are a few things. One of the things is I have and had multiple revenue streams going into the pandemic. And looking at them, if you think of them like little sliders on like a sound mixing board, each year, one of them would be a little higher or a little lower. And then some years, some of them might even be zero, but there were 7 or 8 of them. So in total, 2019 was my best year ever. But if you looked at individual lines, a couple of them, it was not a good year for that line, but in total, it was great. So what happened for me is a few things. I've been doing webinars since 2007. Back when I like to say we used to have to explain to people what a webinar was. How am I going to see this? Where do I go? Do I have to fly there? No. You just sit in your office and tune in. And I remember researching the technology, and we ended up using WebEx at the time. And I didn't use video because the bandwidth wasn't as good as it is now. And things like that.
These days, yeah.
So if you think about it, in 2020, I'd been doing webinars for 13 years. So the presenting virtually for me was nothing new. That was nothing new. Keeping an audience was nothing new. Probably the best compliment I ever got was someone I ended up meeting at a live event who had been listening to my webinars, and she said, "Alan, I love your webinars, but I do have one. If you don't mind, I have just one complaint." I said, "No, please tell me how I can be better." She said, "You're really funny, but you don't always give me a chance to stop laughing, and then you start talking again." And I said to her, "You do know that I can't hear you, right?" I don't know that you're laughing. So I in my head go, I think that was pretty funny, give them a beat or two. But in a live event, we don't talk over the laughter, right? Let them laugh. If they want to laugh, please go ahead and laugh. But I thought that was a great compliment because that and one other one where somebody said, "Was I the only one on?" And I said, "Well, no, we actually had 800 people on there." She said, "Well, it felt like you were talking just to me." I said, "Thank you. That's my goal, is to do that." So when I look at my business, what I did last year, once I realized, again, going through my own 7 stages of grief or whatever it is, denial and all that kind of stuff and acceptance, I said, okay, I have a feeling this is going to be longer. My industry is being decimated right now, which means my clients don't have a lot of money. How can I help them and keep my business afloat at the same time? So early on, I did a lot of free things, just giving back to my industry. Somebody said, "Hey, could you come and give a presentation? Could you do a presentation for my group? Could you do this? Could you do this?" And I did. I also refused to buy into the pity party. So if someone wanted me to get on and complain about what was going on, I didn't want to be that voice. And I said, I'm thank you, but that's not what I'll come and speak about. I will speak about how to be better. So I actually did in late March of last year, I did a free webinar called 10 Proactive Things You Can Do Now to Lean In. And then that was my voice. So I let everybody have their pity parties, and I was being that voice. And then what I started doing is testing little things to see what's the price point that people can afford that can bring me some revenue as far as giving them advice. So I started doing some paid webinars in addition to the free ones. And I said, "Oh, let's do $19.99 and see if people will pay $20. And they did. So then I did $25, and then eventually I did $29.99. And I would get less people at $29.99, but less people at a higher dollar, you could still gross the same amount there. And then I just doing other things like that. I would do private training, and some people would still have me do private sales training or private consulting. And I had been doing in-person mastermind days, a one-day mastermind. And since we couldn't do that, I decided to do a one day, not really a full day, but it was a good 5 or 6 hour virtual mastermind at a lower price point so that people could come. I'm doing air quotes. They could come virtually. And then I do one-on-one website reviews because my first book was about websites called If Your Website Was an Employee, Would You Fire It? Not for the wedding industry, just for any websites. And I did group website reviews in addition to the private website reviews. So I was mixing in the people that wanted me to do private consulting and training with these groups. And I would get sometimes 3 or 4 and sometimes up to 10 or 15 people for these groups, brought me income, offered them something at a lower price point, helped me help them understand their business, their pricing, their packages, how they're selling, things that they could do now. So I actually created more products for my business that didn't exist before because they didn't need to. 2019 was my busiest year ever, flying around the world, doing in-person sales training, in-person speaking.
I remember we met in London with a huge event. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it was a beautiful, beautiful time. We had a wonderful steak dinner, cooking it ourselves, though. Usually when I go to a restaurant, they cook for
me.
I
remember the reception room, which I think was a royal building. And I just thought, this is the moment which I'm going to remember for a very long time.
It was quite ornate. It was definitely
ornate is one way how to put it. Yeah.
And that's the thing with my business is, I was flying around the world going and being a speaker or a featured speaker at these events, you're treated like royalty in some cases. And it's people say, doesn't the traveling get tiring? I said, yes, the traveling does, but being in those places, you and I, we met in Phoenix, but for you and I then to be sitting having dinner in London is just such a treat. It's something that people don't get to do. So for me, there are some lines of my business, again, looking at those lines that went to zero. In 2020, after March, literally just went to zero. In-person training went to zero. But now remote training picked up. Lines that didn't exist before. Product sales. I was selling product, books. I have 5 books and I was selling them at conferences. Well, there were no conferences. So people brought their conferences online. But that there's no hallway with a conference online. There's no really good virtual trade show for a conference online. Yeah. So my product sales last year just tanked. But what the pandemic allowed me to do was things that I hadn't had time to do before. So my most popular book is called Shut Up and Sell More. It's actually Shut Up and Sell More Weddings and Events. I created 2 special editions for my 2 niches within my niche. So my niche is the wedding and event industry. And within that niche, there are caterers, venues, photographers, DJs, florists, etc. I now have 2 editions. One is Shut Up and Sell More Weddings and Events, the Disc Jockey edition, and Shut Up and Sell More Weddings and Events, the Caterer Venue edition. But that solidifies me as an expert, not just in this industry, but in their lane within the industry, which makes me that much more valuable to those particular groups. So it's the same thing I've been saying to my clients is, how do we cut down on what you do, narrow your niche even more so you become more valuable to the really, if you think about it, the small group of people that you need to do business with. And that's the thing. I know you talk about leadership. I want people to see that there are, just in the US alone, there are a little over 2 million weddings in a normal year. And if you look into any particular municipality, there are going to be hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands. Like I live in New Jersey, there are going to be 50 or 60,000 weddings a year in the state of New Jersey. How many weddings can one venue do? Can one photographer do, right? How many can you do? I have a client who they're a disc jockey entertainment company, and in a normal year, they'll do 1,000 events a year. But that's 1,000 out of probably 100,000 in their area. So they're still only doing 1%. So find the 1% that values what you do. So I've been adapting to the pandemic, but also helping my clients adapt to what they're doing so that they can come out of this better. I don't know if this is happening where you are physically, in a beautiful place where you are right now. Indoor dining here only opened up last September and then very small, and it's opening more and more. It's still about 50% now. But what I noticed is a lot of the restaurants have pared their menu down to a much smaller menu. I'll give you a simple example. My wife just walked in before and handed me a Diet Coke from McDonald's. Since we work from home, sometimes just to get out, we'll go drive through McDonald's and get 2 Diet Cokes. It gets you out of the house here. And I noticed on the menu board, I was there the other day, and I there was nothing really for lunch in the house. And I said, maybe I'll get a grilled chicken sandwich over at McDonald's. They don't sell it. They don't sell it anymore. They only sell their crispy chicken. They don't sell any salads. I never really paid attention because I just get a Diet Coke. They don't sell salads. They don't sell grilled chicken. And there's a bunch of things they don't sell anymore. Makes their business much more efficient. Efficient for ordering, efficient for preparing, right? All those kind of things. So I've been helping a lot of my clients do the same thing. I had one client had 9 packages they offered, and we cut it to 3. I said, besides creating decision paralysis, when you show someone 9 packages, you don't really need 9, and they're not that different.
That is a very important point here, because we have, and I'm not going to put names out here, but we have customers, no, not customers. We have colleagues who simply say, my business cannot adapt. They will say, Alan, that works for you. My clients don't buy webinars, and they don't do remote coaching. It doesn't work with my business. Do you think they're making this up? Do you think that any business can adopt to any kind of situation?
Absolutely. Because here's what I teach my clients. You don't sell your service or your product. You sell the results of hiring you for that. And I always use this example for my clients. No one goes to a hardware store and buys a drill bit because they want a drill bit. They go and buy a drill bit because they need to make a hole. But why do they need to make a hole? So in my office right here, I know we're not on video, but there is a cork board full of family photos. And I needed a drill and a drill bit to make a hole, to put a hanger to hang the cork board so I could put the photos. So at this very moment that we're recording, I can peek over and see my mom, who passed away 2 years ago. I can see my dad, who's 90. I can see my 4-year-old grandson. That's why I needed a drill bit. So yesterday I was doing on-site training for the first time in 13 months. And I was telling my client there, I said, they're a rental company. So they do tents, tables, chairs, but they also do hammers and bobcats and cement mixers, right? They do all this kind of stuff. I said, nobody comes here to rent a cement mixer because they want a cement mixer. They rent a cement mixer so they can mix cement, so they can pour the cement, so that they make a foundation for a house. They make a new sidewalk. They're making a swimming pool. But why are they making a swimming pool? So their family can go and swim. So if you get to the why, every speaker is not hired to speak. You're hired because they want your message, your unique brand of what you do, to bring their audience a benefit of what. And if you don't know what that is, if you don't know why they hire you instead of someone else, then you're a commodity. But adapting, I'm speaking. I've been speaking for the last 13 months. It's what's different about it. Well, I don't have to get on a plane and live in a hotel room. For me, that's what's different. But again, I've been doing webinars since 2007, so it's nothing unusual for me. I think it's, what was it, Henry Ford, I think, who said, whether you think you can or whether you think you cannot, you're right. So the speaker who thinks I can't deliver my content, I can't provide value. Now, the truth is, I'm not getting paid the same. I know there are some speakers who say I get paid the same. My industry doesn't like to pay at all anyway. So I'm already the anomaly. I'm the only CSP, in my industry. I'm certainly the only global speaking fellow with 37 in the world. But they don't, and I've been able to get people to pay me because they understand that the value they're going to get from me is a value for their audience, whoever their audience is, members or employees or whatever it is. So what I sell is not speaking, and I don't sell training. I sell the outcome. So if somebody says, Alan, what do you do? I help wedding and event businesses sell more, profit more, and have more fun doing it.
And that is a very important, these were very, very well designed 3 main aspects of your business. And I think many people now might sit there and think, wow, I really need to do something. but maybe they're a bit overwhelmed by what you've achieved and they think, where should I start? So to round up this interview, what are Ellen Berg's top 3 tips of people who think I should change my business right now? Where do I start? Ellen Berg's top 3 tips.
Understand your ideal customer, because you don't need to do business with everyone. So know your avatar, and you break your avatar down into 3 things. If you're trying to figure your ideal customer, you want to know the geographics. So where are they? You want to know the demographics. So what are the measurable characteristics of that particular customer or business, if it's individuals versus businesses? So Fortune 1000, Fortune 500, they're in Spain, they're global, what are they? And then the psychographics. What is it about your ideal customer that draws them to you and your unique style, delivery, whatever it is that you're delivering? So most people really can't identify their ideal customer. Like I told you, for me, the wedding and event industry, somebody at the National Speakers Association conference said to me the last time I went, Alan, your niche is an inch wide, but it's a mile deep.
Yeah.
And that's on purpose, because I really don't speak about weddings at all. I speak to people who do them. But I don't talk about weddings. I talk about business. And I've spoken to, many other industries about business. I just choose this industry because I've narrowed my niche, so my expertise rises that much higher above other things. So first thing would be really understand your ideal customer, because if you were fishing, it's much easier to catch fish if you know what kind of fish you're looking for than I'm just going to catch fish today, right? So focus on that. The second thing is, don't speak in your marketing, in your conversations, on your website. Don't speak just about what you do. Speak to that particular avatar about the results that they'll get if they choose you. So again, you speak about leadership. Well, there are hundreds of people in the world, probably thousands maybe, that speak about leadership.
Millions.
So you have to narrow that down for me even more. And you say, well, I'm not looking for everyone. I'm looking for, and again, this particular type of business, this particular industry, people that are in chemical manufacturing, people that are in whatever, people that are in Germany, people that are in Spain, people that are in South America, right? So give me that avatar. And then what is it that you're going to bring to them? How are they better off than they were before? Now, I will admit, if you're a speaker who's just a kind of a feel-good keynote type of a speaker, that might be a little bit more difficult, because it's not a tangible result like more sales or, lower costs or things like that. But you're still bringing them a value. People are at home and they're depressed. They're not having the social interactions and things. What is the value you bring? Because if you can't articulate that, then why would anybody want it?
Yeah.
And then the third thing is, make sure that everything you do involves a call to action that includes that value. So like if you're looking on my website, on the sales training page, it would say, if you want to find out how your team can sell more, profit more, and have more fun doing it, call, email, or contact me. Okay. So very, very specific. And then I know you said 3, but let me squeeze one thing in here. How do you get across what it is that's different about you? And I like to say the difference between your brand and your branding. Like my branding is my logo. It's my colors. It's my website. That's branding. My brand and your brand and everybody listening's brand is what people say about you after they have experienced what you do. So if you read a restaurant review, that's the restaurant's brand. The service was really good. The food was delicious, whatever it was. Or, sometimes it might say the service was great, but the food was So their brand is good service, food, right?
Yeah.
So if you go to my website, alanberg.com, it's just my name, ALANBERG.com. Every page has very short testimonials throughout the page. Every page, including blogs. Every page has it, because I can't say what people say about me. Right? What people say about me is their personal experience. Well, that's their experience. And that is your brand. So what I don't see on so many people's websites and marketing materials is their customers. So unless you're brand new in business, it's their customers, their audiences, planners, whoever it is that hired you, people that have experienced what you do, saying in their own words to other people, this is what you might experience. For me, one of my favorite quotes someone wrote to me one time was, "You're probably the only speaker I can listen to without once looking at my watch." That's a great quote. I can't say that. Imagine I say, so Niles, I'm probably the only speaker you can listen to without once looking at your watch, right? That's pretty darn pompous, right? Right. Yeah. Now, here's interesting. Somebody saw that quote on my website and he wrote me and he said, Alan, I was looking at my watch because I was hoping it wasn't over yet. He made it even better, right? He made it even better. So, and I can't say any of that. So I have all over my website in context, by the way. So if it's a sales training page, it's a sales training quote. If it's a website review page, it's a website review quote and speaking and so forth. I have in context, if you're reading about me, there's going to be three things. I normally say four, but for me, I don't really have great photos. Not like my customers who are in the wedding industry would have great photos of weddings. I have text that talks to the people who are reading it about the outcome. So I use the word you and your a lot. So it's either you personally or you and your company, right? You. I call it the you test. I actually search the word for the word you to see if it exists. I have the short testimonials that support whatever I just said. So if I said that, you have me come and speak for your audience, they're going to be entertained, they're going to be educated, and they're going to have fun with it, and they're going to walk away with things they can use right away. I'll say that on the page, you. But then the testimonial will say, 5 minutes after Alan's presentation ended, I responded to an email the way he said, and I got the sale, right? There's context to that. And then the call to action is, if this is the way you want to feel about your next conference and your next speaker, call, email, or contact me today. So there's context to all of that. So it brings together that whole, how do you know the results of doing business with you? It's in the reviews. It's in the testimonials. It's in the thank you emails and notes that you've gotten from people. Push that out there. So when someone goes to your site, they're not seeing basically a clone of every other speaker or, whatever it is that you do. Make it different. Like the photo you've been to my website, the photo on the homepage of my website is from behind me on stage, instead of the typical, which is in the audience looking at the speaker. Yeah. And the reason for that is my focus is on the audience. Therefore, the focus of my homepage when you get there is me looking at the audience and you see their faces instead of my face.
Yeah. And I think these are the perfect final words for this podcast. Thank you very much, Alan. This is brilliant advice for so many business owners out there. Is it okay when I put your contact data in the show notes of this podcast if people want to reach out to you? Is that okay for you?
Absolutely. Accessibility is something that shows up in my reviews all the time, that people are surprised I answer my own emails and answer my own phone. So yes, please do. Please do.
Excellent. So I'm going to put your contact data in the show notes of this podcast. So at the end, there's only one thing for me left to say, Alan. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for inviting me.